the special meeting for the Paradise Town Council. If you please silence your cell phones and stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, Dina, roll call.
Roll call. Councilmember Bolin?
My body's here.
Councilmember Culleton?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Jones?
Here.
Councilmember Tryon?
Here.
Mayor Crowder?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. So, with this, invite our chief up.
Hello, everyone. Here today to give you a little bit of what's going to happen or what we predict is going to happen for fire season. The first slide that we're going to get to, don't start it yet because it'll be automatic. I'm just letting you know. It's an actual video, and it's from our predictive services out of Reading. So our Northern Operations Center has a predictive services department that has meteorologists on board, and they have a group of them that kind of sit in a room and analyze the data that's coming in on the weather and things and gives us out a prediction, and they produce a video periodically for us to share that information. So that's the first video, and then I'll have some discussion with you folks right after that. Yes.
Welcome to the 2021 fire season outlook for the North Ops region. For May, large fire potential for the North Ops region is normal, although initial attack will increase and some spots in the Sacramento Valley and Foothills PSA could see high-risk conditions at times. Normal is defined as less than one large fire per PSA in May. From June through August, above normal areas are those above 2,000 feet that are inland from the coast and excluding far eastern areas. Coastal areas may see benefits from more onshore flow, while eastern and low elevation areas may benefit from lighter fine fuel loading. Mid and upper elevations where timber and heavier fuels are more numerous and becoming critically dry will be vulnerable to rapid fire spread beginning in June. In June, normal is defined as 2 to 2.5 large fires in the Sacramento Valley and far east side PSAs and up to 1.2 large fires elsewhere. In July and August, normal is defined as near one large fire in the Bay Area PSAs and up to 5.6 large fires elsewhere. The rainy season, which begins on October 1st, has been drier than average across almost the entire state. Much of the North Ops region has received less than 50% of normal precipitation. Since January 1st, rainfall has been a bit better in the far northwest and east, but most areas remain drier than average since New Year's as well. On this graphic, the left image shows above normal soil moisture at a depth of 5 centimeters at some higher elevation areas. This is an indicator of recent precipitation at upper elevations in late April. Areas farther south and west are seeing soil moisture values much drier than typical. The 0 to 100 centimeter depth soil moisture image is an indicator of longer-term trends, and the image on the right shows drier than normal conditions, especially in the southwest portion of the region. Heavy dead fuels, averaged over the entire region, have dried to near record levels this spring. Some areas have fuels indices well into record territory for early May, with values close to midsummer levels. This year's snowpack, the dark blue line, has dropped to below 20% of normal snow water content in the northern high country for early May, and it will likely drop to near zero in mid-May. Here's a map view of the recent snowpack. So, with dry soils and a weak snowmelt runoff that will end way earlier than usual, it is expected that live fuels will peak at lower levels and decline to critical values early. This is an example of dry brush in the Sierra foothills. The blue trace shows the current year's fuel moisture values so far. It appears that live fuel moisture at this location has already peaked at low levels and has declined to record dry levels for this time of year. The Evaporative Demand Drought Index shows the thirst of the atmosphere over a defined time frame. Far northeastern California benefited from sporadic light precipitation since New Year's, as shown in the left graphic. The dry weather in April has led to very dry conditions in southern and western areas, as shown in the right graphic. The Drought Monitor product for California continues to show drought conditions intensifying across the state. The sea surface temperatures in the eastern equatorial Pacific are moving from a La Nina pattern to neutral conditions, and so neutral conditions are expected to continue into the fall months. The current predictive services outlook calls for drier and warmer than average conditions in the North Ops region from May through August, although some cool light rain events are likely into the middle of June. The Climate Prediction Center outlook for May indicates somewhere near normal precipitation for California at a time when precipitation normally diminishes. The CPC temperature outlook for May shows warmer than average conditions across much of the nation, including California. The CPC calls for near normal rainfall for the North Ops region over the summer, but this is a time when very little rainfall occurs. And summer temperatures are expected to be above average everywhere. As things look now, fuels of all sizes and types are likely to be drier than normal as we enter the fire season. The snowpack will have an early and light snow melt runoff. The low elevation fine fuel crop will end up normal to lighter than normal and is already quickly curing. This could lead to an early start to the active fire season in all areas, but a closer to normal late summer and fall fire season at lower elevations. With the dry conditions, we'll likely see an active fire season at elevations above 3,000 feet. Some potential weather patterns we are looking at for this summer include a semi-persistent low-pressure trough along the west coast. This would lead to heat waves that are more brief than usual and potentially less intense. Also, it could mean less extreme conditions on a daily basis on days with more onshore flow, which could be more common than usual. The monsoon may end up close to normal. Our eastern areas would likely be impacted more often by the monsoon pattern. From June on, any lightning will pose a threat of new large fire development. Also, there are some unknowns that will be monitored. It is way too early to have anything but a guess on when the fall 2021 rainy season will begin, and also how much will the burn scars from the massive 2020 fire season impact fire activity and spread. This concludes this presentation. Thanks for tuning in. You may reach us for questions or comments at reading.
Well, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news to start off the conversation, but it's not looking good for fire season out there at all. We've already had a 550-acre grass fire out you saw north of Chico. So the discussion on the fine fuel crop, grasses out there not being as tall and carrying fire is definitely not true in our area. It will happen. We are fully accepting that this will not be a good fire season. It's going to be a long one. You saw we don't know when the rain is going to come in the fall, and there's some grave concern for elevations 3,000 feet or above, which was roughly the town of Paradise, and as we move up into the Sierra, and because of those large trees soaked up the moisture already, and they'll be, by the time we get to the fall, even more conducive to carrying fire. So it is not a positive outlook at all for this fire season, and in most cases it's in line, if not worse, than what we saw in 2017 and that dry year. So with that, is there any questions on the weather? Sure.
We're at like 1,500, 1,400 to 2,000, 2,100.
Correct. Yep.
So they're talking above, it's going to look really bad at 3,000 foot above.
Right. I would leave a gray area in there. I'd leave a gray area in there. That's, whenever there's a number put on anything, you can go plus or minus that 3,000 elevation. So In the foothills, you have to take into account the types of trees that we have here in this trend. You guys are in sort of the transitional. They're dead here in the town, but you have the oaks and you have those other sort of things that are still out there, and those trees are stressed as well. So they, depending on their continuity and things, they'll carry as well.
And the other question would be that last point they made. They don't know what the burn scar area was, the probability,
So when we look at burn scars, so take a look, and we'll use the campfire example. We know because we're driving around here what the fine fuels are. The brush is coming back and is yay-haul, but we don't know in the modeling, when we look at modeling and fire growth, we can't be representative of what it used to be. Because right now, all the models, when we run a fire scenario through the town of Paradise, it's using the models pre-campfire. The new model of what the town is going to be reflective of is not in our modeling because it's not well enough established yet to know what that model of grass and brush is, if that makes any sense. So when they talk about burn scars, some burn scars, such as the campfire, will carry, especially in this elevation because of the grass and brush. Some of the other parts of like the North Complex fire and the higher elevations, there is nothing. It's still moonscaped. It hasn't repropagated yet, so they won't carry fire.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, so a couple other things going on. Alert Wildfire Cameras have added a number of cameras around the county. If you haven't visited the website, I encourage you to. There's been a second camera now added up on Sawmill Peak. And our intent there is to have one of those cameras will be on a pivoting or piloting around constantly. So when you visit the site, every about 15 or 20 seconds, it'll turn and it'll see all the way around Sawmill Peak. And then the other one is typically fixed onto the town. We can grab a hold of these cameras at any one time when a fire happens and turn them towards the fire if there's a fire in the community. So this is really a great tool that we're pushing out to the public and for you guys to see, to visit that and have it on your bookmarks and things. When a fire does happen, it'll give you real-time information. And we're able to zoom in with the cameras as well, so they're a lot better than they used to be. Next slide. Evacuation maps and one-way evacuation planning maps, those were updated last year and mailed out to all the residents that were here at the time and addresses that we could forward them on to if they lived out of the area. There are hard copies available. There should be some here. There's some at the fire department and some at the police department. If somebody doesn't have them, they can go in and get them there and also visit the town's website or the county's website and they can get those evacuation plans that are updated out there. So.
Are they available at like the library, Chamber of Commerce, some of the other places?
We can make some available to those places.
I would recommend we should maybe, even make sure all the churches have them, because that's where people.
So I will say that we mailed a bunch and then we printed a bunch. So just how far out we go with them, we try to get people to come visit certain locations to get them so we don't have them spread out and then nobody has, if you run out, we're not going to make more at the moment. There's no funds to make more. So, but we can take some if that's where you feel it's necessary. If you guys feel that there's other places in town, we can get the fire department to drop them off. We're going to have them at the community events that are coming up, at the booths and things to hand out to people. So, okay, next slide. Okay, wildfire watches and warnings. So there's some changes coming to this group. I don't know if they're going to happen for the Sacramento region of the National Weather Service this year. But we've really been preaching and putting out there for people to be prepared and to pay attention to the weather and things that's going on with them. So watches, as we know, that's the area to get time to get prepared mentally. And if you have an idea, if you need to evacuate, where you're going to go, those sort of things. And then the red flag is a time to take action. And we've talked to community groups, and I don't think Paradise is necessarily in this, but we take a community that only has a one-way in or one-way out. And the severity of what that fire weather red flag watch is, maybe it's a time that they may not feel comfortable staying in their location or they have an alternate location, those sort of things to talk about. We're still trying to really educate the public on the National Weather Service processes. We've got a red flag fire danger flag that we're putting out in front of our fire stations when this happens in areas throughout the entire county. So when people drive by, they see it. Hopefully it triggers them to visit the National Weather Service and see where the warning is. And the National Weather Service is now doing some modeling, and I have a meeting with them in a couple of weeks where they're going to look at some of the more extreme events, such as we saw on the day of the campfire and of the North Complex, when we have those inside sliders and there's once a year wind events that come in, and they're not just a red flag warning, but they should be elevated up a little bit higher than that, and what that modeling will look like. So they have some suggestions and some verbiage that they are looking to roll out. Once we get through that meeting, you may start seeing some different language from the National Weather Service on those one-time events or those one-year events that we see that are so extreme, trying to get everybody's attention. So,
Chief, on that note, when there's red flag warnings, what PG&E has been mandated to do is do these PSPSs, and there's a judge that's even encouraged them to do even more. So for a lot of people, this is all great, but once that happens, unless you had the wherewithal to have a generator installed, you don't have internet, you don't have television, you just don't have electronic
right.
notification or means. So, I mean, this is all great, but.
So I can say that we've had those discussions with the National Weather Service. If you've noticed this last summer, they pumped out that information days ahead of what they normally used to be, just a couple days. Sometimes now they're forecasting 3, 4, 5 days ahead. And you'll see a watch come out a lot sooner than you have in the past. So I would hope that information would be relayed to the people. They're paying attention. And then visually, we're, again, putting those signs out at the fire stations, a red flag sign. It's a big red flag sign saying, hey, and so if they're driving around their community and past the fire station, hopefully it triggers there. But as far as that, I don't have an answer to get that information once they lose power.
One of the dilemmas we're faced with,
Yeah.
you know.
You also
So are
have,
you-
go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
You also have the board at PRPD that you can use. And I know the CMA Church, the stipulation for them putting that in is if you had a town incident, town situation, that could be used also. So that might be
Good timing, yeah, good.
one way to use those to get more word out. Not many people go by the fire station, you know.
Right.
Right.
So those are more.
We are looking at other places around town to put them up in the more, Clark Road, all the avenues that
Yep.
our main
So I
travel
think
through.
even here at Town Hall would be a good place to put one of the.
We have one here.
Perfect.
Yes.
And then, are you guys also utilizing Code Red?
So the sheriff's office and the police department are on the Code Red. The fire department doesn't. It is being used, yes, but we don't have control of it, or that's the police department.
So when it's that one time a year scenario that you're talking about, is it a possibility that you could use that? Because that does go out to a lot of,
Yeah, we talked with Chief Reinbold on that, absolutely. Absolutely,
Didn't in the campfire all of that system fail?
Well, I think the system we have in place now is much more robust and able to handle. I'll tell you what, the system worked for the North Complex. We were way ahead of it. We got the notifications out. The system did not go down, and that was taxed extremely well. So, and that system was not in place during the campfire, so
Yeah.
it has been tested.
So that has been fixed.
Yes. The Code Red portion, if you're speaking about that, yes. Next slide, please. So over the years, we've preached for folks to have if they have the defense, we'll have the offense. And so you've probably seen the messaging we've done over the last few weeks on the TV and radio and things on people to do their defensible space. And our inspectors are out there as well as in the town. You got a report last night on the 1,000 inspections that have been completed to date. We're trying to look at different avenues to get some more support to get even more inspections done in a timely fashion. So we're hoping folks take this serious in town. The weeds are high this year. The brush is getting higher. So there is I have a lot of angst and concern that we need to encourage folks to get their part done so that we can do our part. So with that, know that your fire department here in town is part of the regional response here in Butte County. So this is a list of the equipment that's immediately available on any given day here in Butte County. And all of it's available to come and support the town of Paradise if in the event we get a fire here in the town. So next slide, please. That wraps up my briefing to you folks. If there's any other questions.
You said right there, we only have 2 fire engines belonging to Town of Paradise?
You have 2 that are staffed 24/7. One at Station 81 and one at Station 82.
We used to own 3 fire engines.
You do. You have a reserve, 2, if you will, Type 1 or structure type engines that are staffed. One that's a reserve. You have a Type 3 wildland engine, and we're getting a second Type 3. Those will be cross-staffed. I'm speaking specifically that what's staffed every day,
Okay.
365. So we have surge capacity to bring in callback folks and staff those up. Those numbers were reflective as today, right now, if something happened, what you would have staffed.
Thanks.
So I have a, red flag days, watch the news, whether it says, hey, whatever, and all this. So this last Saturday was Red Flag Day. About 4 o'clock, a property across the street wasn't mowing his grass, he was mowing his weeds. Big field, it's, I don't, a couple acre parcel. And so I got a hold of Jason. Hey, is that allowed? Legally it is, but it's obviously not a good idea. So I'll send an engineer out to talk to them. And he did. And basically, too bad, I'm going to do it in the next 2 hours. You can't do it. They said, well, you know, start a fire. You're responsible. It started in Sonoma that way. So my question is, even though it may not be a law in Paradise, do something to inhibit that from happening on Red Flag Day?
Can we pass an ordinance to make it illegal so that you could do something? You could tell him he has to stop?
Absolutely, you could have a town ordinance in line with equipment and utilization on red flag days. I think that's something that you as the council would have to give us direction on.
Isn't there no burn days?
There are, and that there were no burn days, but that's burning. That has nothing to do with equipment use. So if somebody wants to use their equipment,
He was mowing.
He was mowing, but with a big metal blade, and he's not mowing a lawn. He's mowing a field with rocks, and what have you. So I really don't have. I was shocked that an engine company would respond, and I would, oh gee, I'm sorry, I quit mowing. The response just totally blew me away.
Yeah. More than 90% of the time, folks are like, thank you, and they stop. There's those percentage of folks that just don't, and there is no regulation or law right now to prohibit them from mowing or operating equipment. So the balance to be fine with yours, Vice Mayor, your question would be, equipment, what would that equate to? Would it be bulldozers? Would it be excavators? Would it be street sweepers? Would it be, so if you ban equipment on red flag days, you have to, in totality, we need to probably look at what that would mean, because that could mean, anything with equipment and what are you looking for?
It would make more sense to ban activities, I think, like mowing weeds,
With metal, weed.
using a chainsaw.
Right.
String, trimmers
And typically, I'll say we typically suspend burning in the county before we get red flag days. This is an anomaly. We usually don't have them this early in May. They have happened in the past, but very rarely, and very, very to the extent that we've seen in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. So typically, we've already suspended burning, which is coming, but we wouldn't run into this issue. It's still not going to stop people in the middle of the summer. We have equipment cause fires all the time that decide to go out and do something at 11 o'clock in the morning, and that's statewide, countywide.
Yes, and there's actually, if you start a fire running some equipment, a lawnmower, you're gonna have that responsibility. You're gonna get the bill for the response and for any damage that's done and all that, and your insurance is gonna, and all that. It's kind of like, people are gonna be out there, we're telling them on the one hand, you need to deal with your weeds, we don't want that hazard.
Correct.
Oh, no, but you can't use any equipment to do it. Come on.
It's a tough balance.
It's not you can't use any equipment. It's not that you can't
But
do
you
it every
educate
day.
them what, there's like.
It's on a red flag day, and if you want to go out there with a string mower, you're not going to hurt anything. Go out there with a blade mower, and chances are, if you've got a vacant lot, you've got somebody that has no insurance, and
But you still own the lot, you're still liable for anything.
well, absolutely.
I'm just saying, start outlawing people using them. I have a string mower, walk-behind string mower, that has a metal hub on the bottom of the string, and it creates sparks. Now, it's more about the education and common sense, and I don't know, we're gonna make some more laws, I'm not gonna vote for it.
So Chief, do we have anything in place that if you are using equipment during the fire season, that you have to have fire suppression items there with you on your site?
Not to my knowledge, and in the ordinances I've reviewed, as far as a fuel reduction is what you're speaking to specific.
Yeah, so say if somebody's out with a piece of equipment and a fire starts, then they have to have a extinguisher there or water there or
There's not known to me in any of the ordinances I've reviewed with the town that we have an ordinance saying you need to have water with
So
mechanized
maybe
equipment.
that may be a way to handle that, is to make sure that they can,
And that is something I know, like when we do timber harvest plans and things, those are conditions of that process that the loggers and things have to have those. I know on the CAL FIRE side of things, when we do those sort of things, they're implemented. So we could look at something like that. That's what you're asking? Okay.
Several years ago, there was a pretty good fire down on Tangent Lane that the gentleman was mowing with the riding mower started. So, okay.
They happen every year, unfortunately, usually multiple times.
Yeah, it's part of the deal.
Anyway, thank you.
Got everybody's questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and council members, it's a pleasure to be back. I now realize why I'm glad I'm not the fire chief anymore. Sorry, chief.
Don't say that too loud.
Yeah. So I'm here to talk a little bit about training and preparedness. We have a long history of training and preparedness here in the town of Paradise. And for example, between 2005 and 2018, before the fire, we had done 36 in-house trainings on emergency management. We were very well prepared, in my personal opinion, and I have a lot of experience in this. I actually do emergency preparedness training in 9 Northern California counties. And we probably were the best, not probably, out of those 9 counties, we were the best prepared community in Northern California for both the 2008 fires and the 2018 fire. However, we all know the challenges that we faced since the fire occurred. And the first year, we were just trying to survive, just trying to breathe. As the next year went around, we started doing a little bit of preparedness work. But now, as the population has grown back to, I hear, 6,000, over 6,000 now.
6,046.
The level of risk in the first year was, for fire in particular, was 0, or as close to it as possible. That is changing over the 2-year period. So we are commensurately ramping up our training program for the town's emergency staff and our emergency preparedness. So to that end, we have a training tomorrow, and we will continue to have trainings. I expect that we'll have at least 6 trainings a year minimum. That will be for emergency, like emergency EOC, call center. We'll have planning section. You see the EOC set up, I think, for the first time since 2018, and it was never in here in 2018. Well, yes, it was. We were in here in the morning. They were in here in the morning of the campfire, and then moved, and we haven't been back since. And then COVID came, and we did manage emergencies internally past year, 2020, but it was all done virtually. So now we have a virtual capability to manage emergencies, which is new. And what I expect we'll see a lot of is probably a hybrid model, where you might have people in staff in here and people working remotely. There's some great benefits to that. So the bottom line is, I'm here just to say that we recognize the increasing population and threat to our community, and that the town's emergency operations center and staff is ramping up the training to meet that need. I'm here to answer questions and then turn it over to the anchor man. No questions?
Glad you're doing it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I just want to say before I turn it over, I wouldn't do this, and this is just a labor of love for me, a passion, and for this community, and it's a hard thing to let go of, and I haven't been able to do it yet. So someday, I've got a plan to not be doing this forever, and it's in the works, but for the moment, I'm proud to serve. Thank you.
In 20 years, that'll be fine.
No.
Okay. Last but not least. So during this exercise, we obviously have specific roles and responsibilities for
internal staff and for our consultants that come on board to help us through there. We have a planning section, we have an operational section, we have a finance section, we have a director administrative section. And where we want to kind of identify that role is for the council's section of that. And so what I did was put together a memo. This memo is, we can easily edit this memo. This is a working document at this point in time, but it was some of the thoughts to kind of give and create those roles for council members to be part of the EOC. And so what I want to do is just kind of walk through this really quickly to understand what I've put down as the roles, and then get feedback from the council on what they feel like, if there's changes or if there's an exception, or if you accept it. The one thing we want to highlight is that we're going out for an RFP to create to update the EOC plan. And this will be part of that update, so that it'll be codified as that role for the council members. So some of the assumptions that we wanted to make was that I would always be available for the council to contact. So
I have a question about that.
okay,
Okay, so how do you guarantee that? With the campfire, I got a text from Lauren at 7:30, and I spoke to her on the cell phone at 8:30, and after that, I could never talk to her again until after I was in Chico.
got it.
So you can't say that.
I'm going to say that I would be your direct line of communication. I'm not going to be able to answer the phone at all times, but if you needed information, your information would come directly from me.
But then that doesn't work.
I'm going further than that. The phones went down.
Right.
What is our contingency for communication when the phones go down?
Well, that is a issue that we would have for our contingency based on all this. And we can get further into this document that there would be availability of council members to be present at that point in time. So we do have roles and responsibilities that there would be presence inside of the EOC.
I'm still on communication.
If the phones go down, we can't communicate with anybody. So, I mean, you can.
So your first statement, you can't actually say that we will be able to contact you directly during emergencies.
So I can say if the phone system stays up, then you can contact me during the emergencies.
I just think that one of the biggest lessons we learned from the campfire is that your assumptions are all probably wrong, and you need to be flexible and have backup plans.
Okay, so what would you consider a backup plan if the phone system goes down? How do I communicate?
Smoke signals.
I have a suggestion.
Folks,
There are radio, like you could give certain councilmen radios to contact you, and then just have them stay on a specific channel so that they are not.
So when we get further
conflicting with
down,
anyone.
I would say that those council members that would have those radios would actually be present in the EOC at that point in time.
In 08, we were present. We were allowed to be present. We're part of the team. And whether we had other obligations with family or whatever, and we didn't do the logistics. We were just here. We weren't part of the necessarily decision-making team, but we had presence. A lot of us worked on the phone bank, passing out authorized public information. The other thing is, let's assume that all the phones work. All the communication tools, all the electronics work. As director of the EOC in a major catastrophe, you're not going to be able to, oh, Woody's calling, let me get this call. You're going to be busy in decision-making, you're going to be busy in management, and you're not going to be able to, maybe you get back to me in half an hour, 45 minutes.
That's correct.
So, I mean, that's a nice idea.
But that's my vision is that that's how the communication would work. I'm not going to be able to answer every single call every single
So
time.
basically, what you're trying to say is that the communication goes through you, not through other people.
That's correct.
I think you should reword that then.
Yeah, that's what he's trying to say. And if you look further down, there are direct links through other council
Correct. Yes.
members.
Well, but it's limited. Okay, we'll get down, we'll wait till we get to it.
Okay. So we can reword that. Again, this is a living document. That's why we're here. So all communication, I want all communication to come through me from the council. Correct. I do not want council members calling the chief or calling the finance guy or the PIO asking those questions. Those questions should come through me is what I was exactly what I'm trying to
And
say.
if you're not
Okay.
available, then where do we go then?
I will be available, that's what I'm trying to say. I will not always be able to get back to you at a specific time, but sometimes information does take a while to get out, so.
Physically not here. No.
Yeah.
There's going to be happening. That
Correct. Okay. So, careful management of information is critical to life safety emergencies. Town council understands the importance of maintaining confidentiality when participating in EOC activities. Only approved public information may be shared by those interacting in the EOC. So again, that the communication comes in and then comes out of the EOC of the approved information coming out for the emergency. To maintain continuity of public information, public messaging, the town council may participate in EOC briefings hosted by the town manager or the PIO to obtain approved public information. They may share in the town's officials as the town officials during emergencies. Again, we have roles and responsibilities for select town council members below that would be part of that sharing of that information. Town council members are public-facing town officials and will be contacted by their constituents during emergencies, which we've seen a lot. That was one of the big things during the North Complex, was a lot of information was going to you directly from the public, right? So again, we're creating a role and responsibility for a town council member to be a liaison to the public. So if your responsibility is the public liaison and you get a call from a constituent, you can say, call Steve. He's the one in the EOC embedded in there to get the information to them. So that we have that continuous continuity of a liaison to the public. And town council members may wish to get a field visit of the emergency, which you can come through me, and then we can make sure that we schedule that with, it'll probably be my individual. So some of the ideas moving this forward: ad hoc responsibilities for council. As EOC director, I'm creating 2 ad hoc positions for council members. They may fill during the EOC activations, which will enable access to maintain the Brown Act compliance, right?
Why is the Brown Act even involved in an EOC?
Because there's going to be decisions that will be made by a council during an emergency that need to be
No, they're
still.
not.
There's no.
No, we don't have meetings during an emergency with EOC. The director of the EOC runs the operation.
Correct.
As a fire chief.
But there is going to be there will be decisions that will need to be made based on the emergency that's happening.
I don't think that's illegal. I don't think the Brown Act thing.
I think it is a Brown Act.
Pardon me?
It is a Brown Act. I believe it is.
Why don't we ask our new attorney?
We have a
Well,
council.
then how were we all involved in the EOC in 2008?
You weren't here 5 at a time in 2008.
Pardon me?
You were not here 5 at a time in 2008. You were here 2 at a time, at most 3 at a time, which still, it's obviously over the line, but you weren't here 5 at a time during 2008. You look at the pictures, and I've got plenty of them, there were not 5 staff here, 5 council members here at any time.
There's a bunch of us.
So
2, 3.
You and I were here, I know that.
the first thing you have here is the council liaison to the media.
Correct.
Which is what I did for the campfire.
That's correct.
I spent almost no time in the EOC.
Yes.
I mean, somebody told me what was going on, so I knew what to say to the media. But at the same time, nothing went through a PIO either. I was doing like 25 or 30 interviews every single day, and they were calling me directly. I don't know that, I mean, you might think you can control it like this, but realistically, you probably can't.
That hopefully we're not going to be into the campfire situation, right? Hopefully it's a little less.
A normal fire.
Yeah, normal, right? So, and Jim has said this many times. The campfire never happened, right? In EOC planning, right?
It's not possible. It's a nuclear explosion in a community.
So under normal circumstances, we're hoping that this will have some guidance. Obviously, things, and we all know that EOC, roles and responsibilities could change on a dime. Things could happen, which is out of our control. What we're hoping is that there is a little more continuity, that you are the director of, you are the liaison to the to the media. So you will be part of the PIO. The PIO should be kind of almost connected with you to be giving you these information that's coming out of these
So
meetings.
you know what to say. But
Exactly.
my point was I spent almost no time in the EOC, so there wouldn't be a Brown Act
No,
issue because you're not physically there.
when you're not here, that's not a Brown Act issue. And preferably, obviously, any information that is created for release, that's given directly to that liaison. And then they're able to give that one voice, is what we call it, so that there's not 5 different voices saying 5 different things. We speak with one voice. That's the goal. That doesn't always work. We know that. But the reality is we should always be trying to achieve one voice.
So,
What I found when I went to the EOC mostly was that I was in the way and bothering people who had more important things to do.
But if you had gone to the information officer desk to get information, they would have fed you whatever you needed.
Oh, yeah, they did.
And
But-
that was your role.
but-
Your role was to come in, go to the desk, talk to the information officers, correct? And then get as much information as you could from them, and then go forth and
so
profess.
So explain to me this scenario where the EOC director is going to require the town council to make a decision as a council that is not going to need noticing, that is not going to need, any, I get the whole Brown Act thing, but, and the other thing is now that we have electronic, hopefully, remote access to the, you could be in your office and Jim could be at his home and Steve could be at his house and we can all be in different places. We're not in the same room, but I mean, where's that scenario where we would have to make an official decision?
Declaring an emergency.
Exactly.
Well, but you guys declared the last one without our decision.
No,
Well, the
you
fire
have to
chief
ratify
did.
it.
The fire chief did.
He declares it, or his
No, the police chief
designee.
did.
You ratify it within.
It did come to council.
It did.
Yeah, I mean, there's
It always
many.
does.
It's not when on the North Complex fire, when they.
We didn't declare a disaster during the North Complex.
Huh?
We didn't declare a disaster. There was no
We did
disaster.
not declare a disaster during the North Complex.
Oh, but we called for an evacuation.
Yeah, that's the different thing.
Oh, okay, all right.
Declaring a disaster declaration is.
So how do you do that? How do you do that?
How do you declare
How
a
do you
disaster?
declare a disaster without proper noticing or any of that stuff?
It's-
So the fire starts, the fire down in the 500 acres is blowing up skyway. How do we activate this and do that?
It's the law allows it. The law
Okay, that's what I'm
allows,
saying. So the
says,
Brown Act doesn't
he
go
has
with
the
that.
right to declare it, and certain designated people within the town have the right to declare a disaster. That has to be, and the law says, once he does that, that has to be ratified within X days, and it is a noticed meeting. So,
It is not.
It
It is.
But-
It came,
We do.
the fire happened on Thursday.
Yes.
We did that on Tuesday at our regularly scheduled meeting. If we had all been in the EOC and discussed it ahead of time, it would have been a Brown Act violation. That's how.
There are many possibilities
And
that
I
we could
think
have.
that-
We could need to have an emergency council meeting.
Yes.
So there's a lot of scenarios that could cause that.
and you did this in 2008, same thing. We declared a disaster, the council you sat on ratified it at a meeting. How we have done it
I
in
thought
our,
we did it like right then.
Well,
There's also, like Rose said, for an emergency meeting, you don't need to give notification. So
Right.
for a regular meeting, you have to have 72 hours notification, right? For a special meeting, it's 24 hours. For an emergency meeting, if you're declaring or ratifying
Right,
something,
right,
you can
okay.
do that immediately. You don't have to give noticing for that.
But
So
you
that
still
is part of the
can't
difference.
have, all 5 of you have discussed it prior to. You
Yeah.
can't.
It's still open to the public. Yeah, yes. Still runs. the
And
same
we're
way.
doing this thing through the eyes of the campfire. There are other reasons why the EOC would be open.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's snow events, there's the Oroville Dam, which would never happen, exploding, and people flying up here and needing help, and, I mean, there's a whole kinds of different scenarios that would cause this to happen.
and sometimes when we open, we declare a disaster, and other times we don't.
All right.
And so on that, we've kind of identified the liaison to the media, and then the other one would be the liaison to the public, to be able to have that public member, or to be taking on the public input from the public. If Greg's getting calls and Steve is that member designated person, they can have that public member get a hold of Steve inside of the EOC, he's there to answer any questions at that point. So, and the other thing too is to start it off would be the mayor, vice mayor as the two designees to start, and then they could have their replacements come in after that. Again, we all know EOCs could last days, they can last hours, they can last weeks. I don't know how long the campfire lasts, a month? Too long.
Still lasting, I think.
So it's something where we'd have that rotation availability for council members to take those roles on. So that's my suggested memo of roles and responsibilities. I do think we can put some clarification in there on some of those bullet points for about that communication.
So what do we do when we're 5 different people, about 5 different groups of friends and constituents, and we're getting phone calls? People say, Woody, what's going on?
You say,
I gotta call somebody to find out what's going on.
give them Steve Crowder's number if that's the member designee in there, and say, call Steve. He's the one that's embedded in the EOC. Huh?
Why don't I know?
Okay, you're going to know specific information, so you will be able to answer some information because you're contacting me.
I want to know.
Because you're contacting me.
Like Jody said, she got calls from, we're all going to get calls from people, family, friends, and whatever.
Absolutely.
And so we need whatever your PIO, whatever processes you set up.
But we all know, okay, so just from the North Complex, we all know information comes out slowly sometimes, and not slowly in that it's hours, but slowly in that 30 minutes, right? You're on the phone. What are you seeing out there? I don't know. Did it jump the Feather River? Let's get eyes on it, right? It comes out slowly, and you're going to be getting calls, and you're going to be getting calls constantly on that. And I'm not going to have the information immediately because I'm waiting for it to come out too. And so Steve will be in there too. I'm just kind of putting you as that person at this point in time. That will also be in there right next to us, being able to answer those calls also. Hey, I got this. I don't want to be answering the calls from the public. I don't mind answering the calls from you, but I don't want to be answering calls from every public member. So if we have a pipeline for them to be able to feel comfortable and confident that you can give them from a representative that they have in the EOC, then I feel like that is a positive way to make sure the public's engaged.
So I agree with Jody in the fact that there were times down Chico, I'd come by and I just felt like I was in the way. I mean, it was just like, the best thing for me is to stay out of there and let everybody do their work. So the reason I'm bringing that up is I know my personality is I want to help when you want me to help. I don't want to be there and just be eating the food and talking to people as they walk by. That doesn't help anybody.
There
So
was food.
there was plenty of food.
Woody,
There was no food in 2008.
Yeah, there was food, Woody. We don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know how you put that on there or what you do, but I think as council members, our job is not to compound the issues in the EOC. Our job is to help any way possible. It means being away from here, taking calls and getting information, getting out. That's great. You need to tell us what to do at that point in time.
And I think that is a role in here that, when it's ready, when it's needed, definitely I think we fill those roles. If it's not needed, if we're just kind of in a holding pattern waiting for something to happen or nothing's happened or we're past the disaster and all we're doing is mop up at that point in time, then I don't think maybe it would be necessary for have those people in there. But I do think I think you would have benefited greatly to have somebody sitting on your hip and letting you know information.
If we had a PIO, then
Exactly.
it would have been very
Yes.
helpful.
So I think that
I was
definitely.
going to give an example of kind of what Greg was talking about. One of the things that happened was there was no information about what was happening at the shelters. There was a lot of rumors and stuff, and so Lauren asked 2 councilmen, Steve was one of them, to go actually out to the shelters, talk to people, kind of do reconnaissance out there and see what was really going on.
Yeah.
So that's a way you can use council people.
Right, and I think that would roll under probably that public the public liaison to get out there to see things that's happening. And
The other thing, Kevin, is I came by here and another council person that morning, and Mark Maddox asked if we would go up and help with traffic if we felt comfortable. And we needed help with traffic.
yeah,
And you know, if the same scenario were to happen, you know, I think somewhere in here, again, whoever felt comfortable doing it.
let me just be honest, that was out of the box, right? We don't want you out traffic controlling. We really don't. We want to be able to handle that internally for sure. If things hit the fan, and I think Jim talked about that, you have a pulse. I need you out here. You feel comfortable. You know, there's certain times where these plans don't work, right?
Right.
And I think those were times where plans didn't work. But to be honest, we don't want you out there traffic controlling.
You don't have the equipment for it. You don't have the signs, you don't have the stuff. I mean, it was very,
We did. We had vests. We had lights.
there were a lot of people that didn't, I'm saying, and that's
Well, there
tough.
was. I mean, we had Public Works. We had, you know, the PD. We had the sheriff for a little bit. We had a lot of people from out of town. We had Chico PD. We had Cal Fire from out of the area, and I ended up in Holiday Market because we were going to use that to. It was open and to evacuate into, and it was a couple of one engine crew from I believe Mendocino, and I was talking to them because I didn't recognize them, and as you would hear the traffic is, well, where's Walgreens? Oh, it's about a quarter of a mile up the road. So I mean,
Yeah, there is those times those are just out of the ordinary
We all
times.
do whatever we have to.
Right. We
And I
really
would say, to clarify, maybe the language is wrong, that those two positions are standing, but ad hoc is anything that somebody can do that helps at the moment.
Right.
You know, so the ad hoc roles are just the circumstances. You're here, you can do it, you get a job. Standing roles these are the ones that stand all the time. So that doesn't eliminate the other council members from roles. It just means these are the standing positions of the EOC. But hey, you know, we need you to go over to the store and pick up the sandwiches. You got to roll, right?
that's a good point.
did that too.
Also, I think, having worked in some EOCs for various times in my career, they can be really great and they can go horribly wrong, and you just never know depending on what you have. And so I think that it's important that we're getting ahead of the communications piece, because that's the one that goes south the quickest. If incorrect information gets out, it can just be a disaster. And so I think the other thing is I look at it like, once something like this hits, as a council member, I feel like our role reverses to where we're not in charge, we're the support crew, and we need to do what we can to support what's going on in the EOC.
Yeah. And I think this, and I agree with that. I think it's a support role, but it also is a figurehead role too, right? I think that you guys need to be the face of some of the media responses. You need to be the face of some of the concerns from the public, right? So it's that almost that buffering side of things where you're the top side and the bottom side of that.
I think that the campfire was an anomaly. And like Jim said, you can't plan for that.
Yeah.
We had one of the best plans around. We practiced. Remember, we did evacuation routes. We did the whole deal. And it just didn't work that day, in those short minutes. So what we're really planning for is the more normalized fires coming from this direction or whatever, and the more normal in a fire response. So there's other EOC activations necessary. Because in the 08 fire, which is the only one I can give a comparison to, that was part of the information gathering. Like we had PD, and I think we had somebody from fire that was assigned, or maybe it was a staff member, that was assigned at the Incident Command Center. And we had a breakdown in communication. So we weren't getting accurate, the director, your position, wasn't getting accurate information. We didn't know what was going on in the shelters. We didn't know what was going on in the field. At the time, what's her name that was our mayor then, our old former town clerk?
Frankie.
Frankie Rutledge, yeah. You know, at 2 a.m., we went out to look at a fire front on Pence Road, you know, just to bring intel back, you know, to share and stuff. Jim and I went to evacuation centers to give updates. So to Rose's point, I mean, and I'm not trying to, I don't want to be in charge of it. And I understand Greg and Jody's point, yeah, you can be in the way. That's not my intent. I'm just one of those kind of people as a citizen, as an elected official. I just want to be involved. I just want to help.
Yep.
And so whether it's directing traffic with Steve or whatever, you know, like I say, I sat in that back corner answering phones, the public calling in, giving updates. We had a PI, we had, you know, it was all based on that official, here's the public release, here's the information that's being released at this, and it was every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes, we got updates. But a lot of us had to take on those roles in a normal fire situation if we're operating out of our normal EOC. And so as long as there's some methodology in this plan and this assignment for these ad hoc positions or for this, you know, so that if we can be used, because I know if there's emergencies, I don't want to be sitting at home watching TV, you know.
But you might have to. So and the reason why is because if she's the public media, you're going to have to rest up because you're going to take her position when
I'm not going to do that. I never tell the public the truth.
Okay, then you will take his position then. So there's got to be a flopping here too, right? So sometimes we have to take that step back, allow the role to be filled because you know you're going to fill it on the next round. So this is just the start of identifying. I feel like the biggest thing that I hear complaints about any disaster, communication. You didn't communicate enough. No one took I didn't have any idea what was going on. Communication forward and backwards, right? And so I think if we can have your role of supporting that communication, I think we will be in a better position moving forward.
Kind of a funny story. Bear fire, the North Complex fire. I was actually on the phone with our chief, and there was a guy telling me the fire had crossed 70. And he's standing there, and he's saying, no, it hasn't. The guy's arguing with me.
We had that same conversation, I think, a few times.
It was also, I think, back on the campfire, we wanted the information out to be so perfect. Sometimes it was late. And you know, sometimes it's not going to be perfect.
Yep.
That's a real fine balance there. I mean, that's a tough one, and it's always an issue. You want it accurate as possible, but you don't want it so delayed that it's almost history at that
The
point.
correct term is timely and accurate. It's hard to get both of those at the same
Exactly.
time, but that's what you're always trying to achieve is information that's timely and accurate. And I think, you know, we've had this discussion about this, is that the idea here isn't to exclude, it's to include.
Yes.
You know, we come to you with a formal proposal for standing interaction as opposed to, okay, here's the emergency, what happens now, known in advance, where we can try it out, work with it, see how it works, and, you know, improve on it. But it's about open communication, really.
Yep.
And hopefully, we won't need it at all this year.
That's right. This is, we always say, right, EOC training is like insurance.
Yeah, hopefully that's the deal.
It's always the goal.
Right.
That we plan and plan and train, and we don't need to use it.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Are we done? Or is there
Where's
more?
the food?
So just to let you know, like Jim said, we are going to have an exercise tomorrow to go through this process. This will be an internal exercise from a very high level, right, of a starting. There's quite a few new individuals, and there's quite a few seasoned individuals here that we're all going to kind of come together and walk through an exercise. So we appreciate you guys being here and being part of this process, and hopefully we'll never have to use
You
it.
don't want us to come and tell you what to do tomorrow?
Yeah, try to. Well, then we'll see how that. I'll put you in. You'll be the liaison to the public. Nope. We're adjourned. I mean, if you want to adjourn us.